All right, guys, what's up? My name's Mariah. First things first is I'm not a lawyer, so don't be taking this shit to the bank. All right. This is very introductory, and it is for people who are not familiar with these really long drawn out subcontracts or people who have never read them. And that's okay because we all make mistakes. So, drawings and schedule. If you don't have drawings and a schedule from the general contractor, go ahead and stop, because estimating a project without drawings and without a schedule is dumb. Because how are you going to effectively estimate? The answer is you're not going to. So the current drawings are very important, and it seems to be that that's basic information. However, remember that these big general contractors sometimes use the exact same disorganized shit that everybody else uses, which means that there is room for human error. So if you get a request for bid and then you don't have time to actually estimate it for a week or two, make sure that you're following up and getting confirmation that these are actually the most recent drawings. And the schedule is also very important. The overall project schedule is also very important, because without it, you cannot estimate how long it's going to take you to get paid retainage. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. And you also can't effectively estimate your overhead costs, such as insurance requirements. And we're going to get to that. Those are why the current drawing and the current schedule are very important. So when you're looking at these drawings, what's important? Obviously, your scope is very important. But the thing that's even more important than that is the location of the project. So you need to include in your estimate the cost, right? If it's a BFE, right, that's going to add a cost, as well as if it's on top of the building or in a high security area, right? So the location of the project is really important. Don't just bid out your scope, because you got to get there, right? Your guys have got to get there. You got to pay to get there. So just really think about those kind of things. Now, continuing with the schedule, you're going to want to not only look at the schedule, look at the location of the project, but you're also going to want to look one trade before you and one trade after you. So luckily for you, if you're the dirt guy, you don't really need to worry about this. But for everybody else, right? Everybody else needs to worry one trade before, one trade after. Because if you're not worried, you're going to miss something. And if this trade before you or the trade after you doesn't miss something, it becomes your job. And you hope that the people you work with would be more understanding, but that's just something you need to CYA, cover your ass. Okay. One trade before, one trade after, sometimes more than that, depending on who you are. But always look before and after. So once you do that, you're going to realize, okay, well, shit, he didn't, I don't know if this guy is going to complete this or not. So what do? You're going to add exclusions. Exclusions are very important. What is not included in your bid is just as important as what is included in your bid. And also alternates. So alternates are a really good way to differentiate yourself from other subcontractors you're bidding against. General contractors love alternates. And one, because you know the scope better than they do, theoretically, or probably. And then two is because it gives them more of apples to apples versus apple and oranges. It'll also let them see who's missing or possibly missing something in their estimate. So alternates are a really good way to show your proficiency, as well as cover your ass, right? All right, next thing, general conditions. So that's like the bulk of the contract, right? Like it's just like feels like random safety, this meeting that, payment application that. Okay, let's just make sure that you're paying attention. Okay, don't get so excited about that number at the bottom, because the number at the bottom is only going to make you money if you can meet the general requirements and if you have prepared to meet the general requirements. Okay, so let's go through these meetings. These GCs want meetings. Okay, they want meetings. They want them weekly. They want daily logs. They want check-ins. They want a competent person to be at these meetings. Okay, so a competent person, if you are a small subcontractor, a competent person is probably you, and you are probably the only person who can. Even if your foreman's great, he probably doesn't have the same amount of like authority or responsibility as you. So you need to, again, make sure that you're estimating and including your time or a competent person's time. All right. So, and again, those are like weekly meetings that can really take up a lot of your time. And that goes back to the original point that was made, is location of the project. This project's in a different city or a different state, hopefully not a different state, but if it is, who's going to go? Okay. Safety is very important. People love, GCs love having safety meetings, right? Required safety meetings, required toolbox talks. That's going to take your guys in the field away from their scope for, maybe the meeting's 15 minutes, but let's be real. You're getting rid of an hour. Again, that's going to affect your estimated completion, right? That's going to mess up your days. It's also going to mess up your money. Think through those things. Another point on safety is there could be in the general conditions a requirement that your guys have to be OSHA certified. Shit's expensive, man. So if it is a requirement, make sure you are ready, and damn sure make sure you include it in your, make sure you include in your estimate the cost of that, right? Plus the guy's downtime. All right, restrictions. Restrictions is also something that people, I don't know how, but kind of forget about because it's so small. It's just a tiny little line, okay? So restrictions are when, the only one that really matters. The only restriction that really matters is time, okay? Whether you can't work a specific day, typically Saturdays and Sundays, and or there's specific hours that you can work. So if your guys are used to working from 6 in the morning till 5 at night, and all of a sudden on this project, you have to work from 9 o'clock in the morning and till 5 o'clock, gonna mess you up. So you need to read and understand, or at least make sure that they're not gonna mess up you and your guys, all right? Especially if you're in something that's outside, right? Like concrete, right? It's gonna be hot as hell. You may need to, you guys know this, but you may need to get like a special like permit or something from the city to be able to work, right? Like if you're a concrete, you need a port 2 in the morning, you got a port 2 in the morning. So just make sure you're looking, again, going back to location and now restrictions. Last thing I'm going to talk about on general conditions is going to be software. So if it's a big general contractor, they're going to have their own kind of software, most likely, and they're going to require all of their subcontractors to utilize it. This software might just be a way for submitting bids, right? It also could be a way for like requesting payment. It also could be a way just to communicate and do your daily logs. So again, like even if this is free for you, it's actually not, right? And this is something you need to think about when you're estimating. It's like, how much time and effort and energy am I going to have to put into the software? If you're good on computers, good for you. Most contractors I know are not good on the computers. And if you don't have an admin, guess who's going to figure that shit out? You, bro. So make sure you're thinking through that. Okay. And also if you're blessed to have an accountant, then their time is going to have to go towards understanding this. All right. Or understanding how to do the software. And you're going to have you better have room for error. All right. Insurance requirements. This is the biggest problem I've ever seen when small subcontractors try to go into being a general contractor. Okay. I'm sorry. Go and work for a big general contractor. You have to have the right insurance or they will not pay you. Okay. You have to have the right insurance or they will not pay you. Big GCs have job specific requirements. It's not generic insurance. It's not what you have at home, or I'm sorry, currently have. And the most important part is that it is for the duration of the project. The duration of the project. So we're going to go back to general conditions, and you got to have that schedule, right? Because you have to pay those insurance premiums for that job specific certificate of insurance the entire project, not until you're done with your scope, not at the beginning of the project until the end of your scope, for the entire project. So if that overall schedule says it's going to be 12 months, you damn sure better be ready to pay 14 months of insurance premiums. All right. I'm going to say one more time. The insurance requirements are for the duration of the project, not the duration of your scope, and they will not pay you if you don't have the right insurance. Okay. General liability. You guys should be familiar with this. If you don't have insurance, I won't tell anybody, but you're not going to work for a big GC if you don't have it. General liability is relatively cheap. I'm not an insurance agent, but so general liability, I'd say that most people have about $1 million, depending on the project that you're working on. Well, number one, the general contractor is going to have their own requirements, right? Just generic. So let's just call that 3 million is their general liability, what they require for their subcontractors to have. Okay, great. But sometimes it's out of the general contractor's hand, and the owner of the actual project wants 5 million or 10 million or whatever. And obviously that'll affect your premiums. Then you got workers' comp. So one thing I see small subs doing is they will try, I don't know the actual lingo. I guess it's called, I think it's called a statutory waiver. That's what it's called. So there is in Texas a statutory waiver for workers' compensation, but let me tell you, the GC is not going to accept that. So you can bring that piece of paper, but it's not going to get you anywhere. So you got to get workers' comp. Auto liability. Another thing I see small subs doing is trying to use their personal policy instead of a commercial policy. And I'll be honest with you, sometimes it works. Sometimes like you can just kind of fight them, push back a little bit, and they'll kind of give in because they don't really care, especially if your scope is small. But just know that it's a requirement and you should expect to do that. I think I had some other ones. Let me see if I had, additional insured. So if you've never used additional insured on your, I've never heard that term or had to give a certificate of insurance, AKA a COI, with additional insured, this is what it means. It means anybody who's listed, the additional insured, typically the general contractor and the client, it means that they have a right to use your insurance. So even if you say no, they can use your insurance if needed. Okay. And it obviously typically costs additional money. And then there's also another one called waiver of subrogation. Oh no, I don't want to talk about that. We'll talk about that in a second. Sorry. But yeah. And also another thing they're going to ask is for the project address to be listed. Again, this is going to be specific to the job. All right, let's go talk about insurance for 1 second. All right, just kidding. Here's waiver of subrogation. Surprise. Okay, waiver of subrogation basically means that when you add it to your to the certificate of insurance, it means that your insurance is taking the blunt of everything. Okay, so let's just say somebody gets hurt or whatever, your insurance pays them out. The insurance company typically, and if there wasn't a waiver of subrogation, they would go after the general contractor or after the client just because they want to recoup their money, right? Insurance is a fucking fraud. Anyways, so know that that just means that like your insurance is going to pay everything and nobody else's. Arbitration. So arbitration is a word that you will see in the very, very, very small print. And it is important. And this is something that you should fight back on. Okay. Arbitration is when it basically means the location where any court claims will be dealt with. So basically, let's just say that you're a Texas contractor and you're working for a big GC that is across the US, let's say. If in your contract it says arbitration is where the general contractor wants it, it's going to be specific. It's going to list the city and state. But if that city and state is not exactly where you want it to be, right? Probably isn't, then you can try to change it. You're not going to be successful like changing it to your like hometown if you're in like BFE, but you can typically get them to change this to be specific to the project. So instead of, for example, being New York City, right? You could get it to change if the project was in El Paso, Texas, you could get them to change it to El Paso, Texas. They're pretty cool about that. Next thing is retainage. If you've never worked for a big GC, you're gonna be pissed because you're not gonna get all your money when you bill for it. So retainage is a fancy word, basically, which means you ain't getting your fucking money till the end of the job. So here's an example. So let's just say that there is a $2 million contract. Not your contract, but the GC's contract is $2 million. So that's the amount that they're going to bill the owner for this project. Right? And then let's say you're the concrete guy and your scope is $100,000. Okay. Let's just say you're just so awesome that you're going to complete this project in one day, which is literally not possible, but let's just pretend that you do. So you complete it and you bill. You're going to bill for 100 grand. But when you get that check, you're going to get 90 grand. And you're going to be like, why the fuck did they only pay me 90 grand? Well, I'll tell you why. It's the same as the insurance situation. They're going to hold this retainage. They're holding this 10% from you. The general contractor, okay. The general contractor holds 10% of the subcontractor's money. And the owner or the client holds 10% of the general contractor's money as well. And so Texas is a paid when paid state. So basically that means that the general contractor didn't have to pay you shit until the client paid them. Okay. And the client and the general contractor has every incentive and every right to hold this retainage percentage from you. In Texas, it's typically 10%. So yeah, so just be ready for that. And also another thing that's really shitty is that you still have to bill for it. So if that project was 12 months long, I am dying, guys. I'm so sorry. If that project was 12 months long, you got to carry insurance the entire time. And then two, you got to remember to bill for it. And you got to remember to bill for the last 10%. And obviously make sure that you actually receive that payment. There's really no way for you to get around this. I mean, some general contractors have a certain dollar value that they don't care about. So like, for example, let's just say if your scope of work is under 10 grand, they might just pay you the whole thing and not hold on to that retainage, but I wouldn't count on it. And again, know that you're not getting that money, no matter what you do, no matter how bad you bitch, and you're not going to get that money until the very end of the project and only if you have insurance. All right, guys, that's pretty much it. Again, just one more time, I'm not a lawyer, so like, don't go to the bank with this. And if you guys have any questions or have any other topic ideas for me to do another little blog / video about, you can email me, mariah@brovenconsulting.com. And I guess that's it. See you guys later. Oh, wait, am I still being recorded? Okay, so in case I'm still being recorded, I did remember one more thing. If you want to ask me a specific question, you can sign up like on my Instagram or whatever, or send me an email, obviously, to get like a free 30-minute consultation. So if you're interested. All right, see you guys later for realsies.